So today, we're going to tackle a really interesting and often complex topic, the teachings of the Bahá'í Faith on homosexuality. It's a subject that really sits at the intersection of some of the faith's core principles, like unity, and its specific religious laws. Okay, let's dive right in and explore how the Bahá'í writings approach this. To really get a handle on the Bahá'í perspective, we absolutely have to start with its most foundational principle. See, at its very heart, the faith is built on this idea of oneness. And that idea, well, it creates what can look like a paradox when you start looking at its specific social laws. Now, this idea right here is absolutely central. The belief in the oneness of humanity. It's not just some nice, fuzzy ideal. It's truly the bedrock of the entire faith. And what that means is a firm, explicit opposition to any and all forms of prejudice, whether that's based on race, nationality, or any other kind of distinction you can think of. And that, right there, leads us to the big question, doesn't it? If a faith is built from the ground up on universal love and getting rid of prejudice, how does it address the topic of homosexuality? That's the tension, that's the question we're going to unpack in this explainer. Okay, so how do we get from that big idea of unity to the specifics? Well, it all comes down to this next key concept. You see, the Bahá'í understanding of homosexuality is actually rooted in a much broader spiritual law that applies to absolutely every follower, the law of chastity. This concept is really the key to the whole framework of their sexual ethics.
So, what does a chaste and holy life actually mean in the Bahá'í writings? Well, it's defined pretty specifically. It's about self-control over one's carnal desires. And here's the crucial point. This isn't a law aimed at any one group. It's a universal spiritual principle for every single believer, no matter what their personal struggles or inclinations might be.
And right inside that framework of chastity, you find this huge emphasis on marriage and family. They're not just seen as a social convention, they're considered the fundamental building blocks of a stable society, a kind of divine institution that needs to be protected. And this brings us to the specific law itself. The Bahá'í writings are very clear on this point. The only context where sexual expression is considered permissible is within a marriage, and that marriage is defined as being between a man and a woman. Any sexual relationship outside of that specific bond is seen as going against the law of chastity. Okay, so if that's the law, how does this actually play out in real life, especially for someone who experiences same-sex attraction? This is where the teachings introduce a really crucial distinction, a nuance that is absolutely central to their whole approach. And this slide just lays that distinction out perfectly. The teachings make a clear line between one's inner orientation, those feelings of attraction, which are seen as a personal state or a kind of spiritual test, and one's outward actions. The focus of Bahá'í law is on conduct. The expectation is that all believers will try their best to align their actions with the teachings. And this quote, wow, it really gets to the heart of the compassionate tone you find in the writings. Instead of condemnation, what you see is expressed admiration for the spiritual effort, for the struggle of those who, despite their personal challenges, are striving to follow the laws of their faith. That struggle itself is viewed as spiritually meaningful. So what does all this mean for the community itself? Well, the big emphasis is on inclusion and individual responsibility. The sources make it clear that the Bahá'í community is open to everyone. Its institutions are actually forbidden from prying into people's private lives, and prejudice is flat out condemned. The core idea is that every single person is on their own journey, facing their own unique struggles to live a spiritual life. You know, no faith exists in a vacuum. So to really get the Bahá'í position, it helps to zoom out and look at the bigger picture to see how it fits into the broader history of religious thoughts, specifically within the major Abrahamic faiths that came before it. So if you look at this table, you can see a clear pattern. The traditional stances in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all condemn homosexual acts. The Bahá'í writings continue in that same vein, spiritually condemning the practice as something to be overcome through spiritual effort. So you can see its ethical framework really builds upon this long-standing religious perspective. And this brings us right back to where we began, to that apparent paradox, right? How does the faith manage to balance these very specific, unchangeable laws with its huge, overarching universal command to love every single person?
And here's the thing that ties it all together. No matter what the specific laws are that Baha'is are expected to follow in their own lives, the highest ethical command is to show love and compassion to every single person. That is an absolute, non-negotiable principle that is meant to govern every interaction. And that core principle, it completely shapes how Baha'is are supposed to interact with the wider world. They're taught specifically not to impose their moral standards on other people. What this means in practice is that they don't take an official position on civil issues like same-sex marriage. Instead, their social focus is on working to end discrimination and protect the human rights of all people, which goes right back to that core belief in the oneness of humanity. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. The path for a Baha'i, when you look at it this way, is really a personal and spiritual one. It's about accepting the teachings, trying to live by them out of a sense of love, and, this is critical, showing universal love and respect to everyone while working to build communities that are completely free of prejudice. It's really a path of inner conviction paired with outward compassion. And that leaves us with this one big, thought-provoking question that really gets to the core of this whole topic. How does any group, or really any one of us, navigate that delicate space between holding firm to our own deeply held beliefs, while, at the same time, answering a call for unconditional love and acceptance toward everyone else? That's the essential challenge this approach presents.